Welcome to the Fire from Two Windows podcast, where we take a deep dive into different aspects of the fire service. My name is Matt Humnicki, and I am joined with my co-host, Lou Cominelli. We want to express that these are our own opinions built by experiences and education while honing our craft. These are not the opinions nor directions from our various employers. We are here on our own to spur conversation and help level the playing field for all. Good evening, Lou.
Evening, Matt.
Have a little bit of an article that I took from, this is actually from Firefighter Nation, titled The Senior Man. Actually, the title is The Senior Man is Dead, How Less Tenured Firefighters Can Fulfill the Role. So I just want to read the beginning portion of this. The American Fire Service has seen a mass exodus of mid-tenured firefighters. For one reason or another, the firefighters who were once seen as the senior men are no longer in the fire service. Along with the exodus, departments are also expanding and growing, leaving fewer tenured firefighters getting promoted to fill the spots. I'm not saying that there are absolutely no more senior firefighters, but we are no longer seeing tailboard firefighters who stay in that position for very long. This leaves a very small experience and tenure gap between our rookies and firefighters who are now attempting to step into that role of the senior firefighter. Let's start with the definition. What is a senior firefighter?
I mean, by its basic definition, the senior guy to me would be the guy with most time on the job, not including the officer.
Okay.
And how I was brought up in the fire service through our department and then with other friends in bigger departments and then going, attending flips at the FDNY, it was always the same notion. The company officer is probably one of the most important people on the fire ground. And yes, they have the final say. But in reality, I shouldn't say in reality, I don't know what the best term would it be for, but the senior man should be running the firehouse. If problems and issues get to the officer, something went wrong somewhere. So depending on your department, you might be relying on a senior guy that has 5 years on, 10 years on, if you're a younger department. But hopefully you have senior men in your firehouse that are over that 15-year mark. Because they've had 15 years in the fire service and they've seen things. They've probably seen things more than once. And I'm not talking about, the senior man on the fire ground, that's a whole different animal. The senior man, when you talk about the senior man in the firehouse or the senior person in the firehouse, it has to do with the day-to-day activities within the firehouse. And that includes training as well.
I'd say that's about the same definition that I would put together. It's definitely shifted from when I started to now. So I got hired coming up, just finishing my 8-year mark here. And that's my hire time. Now, when I first started volunteering, even well before that, 5 years before that, 6 years before that, somebody tried to, I didn't understand this definition between firefighter and fireman. I thought it was used interchangeably, and somebody once pulled me aside and said, hey, everybody's a firefighter because you get the certification and all this other stuff. You're a fireman when you've proven yourself. And it's not man like male, it's a title. It's kind of like a respect thing. But as a firefighter, you're always, at least in the volunteer side that I started with, you were tagged on or tagging along with a senior man or somebody they defined as a senior man. That was somebody who had a lot of experience. It didn't necessarily mean the oldest person who is not a boss. And there's different levels of managerial positions as well. But as far as that senior man, you follow the person who has the most action or experience packed into their belt. They're going to make smarter decisions based off that experience. Not always the best decisions, but, they've seen a thing or two. It's just like the farmers.
So everybody should go back to their life experiences. And I've said it before, one of my life experiences, I was in a fraternity in college. We'll just call it pledging. We didn't call it pledging, we called it orientation. But I pledged my freshman year. And if you think college is 4 years, So if you just do a simple proportion, a 1 for 1 between the fire service and college, college is 4 years, a fire, um, a career in the fire service is usually around 20 years. So if you break that down, your freshman year of college would be your years 1 to 5 in the fire service. Your sophomore year is 5 to 10. Junior year of college, 10 to 15. Senior year, 15 to 20. So when we pledged, you got you went through your pledging period, which is kind of like your academy, and then by the end of the pledge process, you still had some time during the semester. So that's kind of like your probationary period. The next semester, the incoming pledge class, you were told by the senior guys in the fraternity, you are not allowed to take part in any of the pledge activities with the new class. And that was because it was done on purpose. You just got done pledging, which was pretty tough. And then it's just human nature. You look at someone else getting the same treatment and doing the same activities that you were just doing, but you feel you had it harder on you and tougher on you. So then if they told you were able to take part in the pledge activities, you might go overboard. You don't get to see it from the other side. So they want you to see it from the other side before you step in that position and then take charge or take part in overseeing some of the pledge activities. I feel like that's how the fire service should look at things. You get out of the academy, you're a probationary fireman for however long out of the academy, and then you get off probation, and then you see another class of probies come in. What you should be doing in that time from from your start of your second year up to your 5 years, you should be mentoring and giving tips on the new guys coming in. Hey, this worked for me. This is what I did in this situation. Hey, we changed the garbages at this time. We mopped the floors at this time. The captain likes, this type of coffee. Make sure the coffee's always on. That's the stuff that those people should be doing. They shouldn't be ragging on guys for not getting stuff done. Hey, probe, you didn't empty the garbage cans. That's not the job of the 1 to 5 year member. That's the job of the guys that have more time on the job. So I think that's an issue. And a lot of things I'm seeing around our area on the interwebs is this whole notion of the lazy senior guy. And the lazy senior guy, his seniority doesn't mean anything anymore. It's the guys that contribute more. My point is, I got 17. Let's just say I wasn't a company officer and I just stayed as a black hat. I got 17 years on the job, married, 3 kids in multiple activities, plus all the other stuff, family things I got to do. I might not have the time to put in off duty or pick up overtime here, even though I do, or, take all the trainings that I want to do because I have other obligations that I have to fulfill. Whereas we have our younger guys now that are getting on the job at, we had some 19-year-olds get hired.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
So we have some 19-year-olds that are getting hired that are still living with their parents. We have 22, we have a lot of guys that are still living with their parents. They have all the time in the world to take classes, to pick up overtime and do all this other extracurricular stuff for the fire department. But then they see a senior man that they don't think he's putting in the effort that they're putting in. It's like, well, maybe 20, 30 years ago when they were your age in your position, they did all that already. They put in the capital. They invested in it. Now they're withdrawing from it. They're withdrawing from their investments to be at their 20-year mark. They've earned that right. Now, does it make it right for the senior man to not get his hands in the sink or take out the trash once in a while or wash the rig or not participate in training? No, the senior man should be one of the first people out there. And the company officer should be relying on the senior man to maybe run some drills or just interject it with their knowledge on drills. When I first got promoted in 2014, the senior man of my group had 15 years on and I had 7 years on. I went to him with a lot of things. Hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about this? Or there was a lot of times where I would do something or I would want to do something and you'd come back and say, hey, boss, it's probably not a good idea. That's the type of senior man you need. He wasn't the first one to get up and change trash. He wasn't the first one to get up and change the mop bucket, but he had the experience and the knowledge of, I've been there, I've seen that, I've done it, I've seen other bosses do that. You want to do this, you don't want to do this, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea. And that's the type of senior man you need. And I feel like there's this whole attitude of just, they see laziness and it might not be laziness. It might be something completely different. They might have something else going on, or they might have 17 years of jadedness towards the department and they just don't want to deal with it anymore. And that's when you need a company officer to get it out of them.
Yeah, but that's on the company officer to do that, not the guys below to rag on them.
Correct.
I think
100%.
there's definitely a soft spot in there. And to the point of this article is that we're losing the true senior people, because you have expansion at the same time everybody's leaving. So you just have a huge wave at a time of new people. Like I said, okay, so technically I have 8 years at this department. 8 years does not sound senior to me. But also when I started, senior men, they were 15, 17, 18. They were plentiful. Years on, not age.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a ton of experience. So my vision of it was kind of, I don't want to say previous generation. It's not an ageist thing. It's just I saw a different view. I had a great set of examples to kind of go, man, I still got a long way to go to be one of my senior men. They're not there. So by default, it's coming down to the 10 years and just under. There's not a lot of those either. So all of a sudden, you have everybody packed in at like this 4 to 6 year range, and they're told you're the senior man by default. So now they are playing senior man. It's not a bad thing, but somehow we got to get it cultured. We literally have to let time and nurturing take that place and get it back into something that is applicable for us. One of the guys, for example, and we kind of were just discussing this before we kicked on this. There's a guy he's an older gentleman. He came into the fire service later in his years. He already had a whole nother career.
Him and I got hired together.
Oh, no. Okay. So I didn't know what year it was, but I know he's close to retirement, I believe, or he's got a couple more years. He's older, but geez, he works out like he's a 17-year-old, or at least he attempts to. He always gets the trash. He always gets the mop bucket. He's the loudest guy first thing in the morning. He loves being there. He's like a big kid, but go ahead.
I was saying that dude, if you're in a bad mood, he will put a smile on your face.
Oh God, he is awesome. He caught me off guard the other day in a good way. I must have been not feeling it. I'm sure you understand why. And he came in and he goes, "Keep your head up. It's all right. We're almost there. We'll get back home." Because we're both at another station. We're both originally from the station you're out of. You run, and it's our little inside joke. We're not miserable, but he breaks my balls. Like, it's good to see you down here. There's finally some good guys. There's nothing wrong with the people there. It's a funny joke. But the guy comes with that whole world before. He always stepped up to the plate. He always acted as the pro B 10 years after his academy. He never let anybody put him down. He was always the first to step up.
Well, I think awesome. with him in particular, he got hired he can only do 20 years and then he's got to retire.
Yeah, because he'll age out, I think, right?
Right. And what he came into the fire service was an appreciation for the job because he already worked a career in another field. You
It was
know,
HVAC. He
it was
was in
HVAC.
HVAC. Yeah.
So crawling under houses, being in dirty basements, being up on rooftops, doing all that, doing manual labor. My brother owns his own HVAC company, and some of the pictures he sends me of some of the stuff, the houses he's in, it's like, man. So he had a career already in HVAC, and he came into the fire service with an appreciation for what he has now. And I don't think we get that. It's not 100%. It's not across the board. There's some of the kids. The one that works with me. He has an appreciation for the job, but there are some that they just come into the profession and they got in so young, they know nothing else. And I just don't think that appreciation's there. But I think we're hitting two different things. Both talking about the senior man. I feel like we're talking about two different issues.
Probably.
Yeah.
Let's start
Like
with yours.
well, I mean, you're hitting on that. Like in our department's case, we were we hired in ones and twos from like the 90s to maybe 2010. Our growth was it was linear and it was very slow. Since 2010, I would say our growth has been exponential. We've went from a 2-man engine company and a duty officer to a 3-man, and this is so we went from a very little amount of people. We went from straight days working as firemen to having an engine 24 hours and the truck just straight days to an engine and a truck straight days with a duty officer. Then we opened up another company, and then we put on 4 guys on each company, and then we opened up an additional company. And all the additions were done in the past
4 or 5 years.
Yeah, right. Exponentially.
Yeah.
We went from 30 something guys to 80 guys in the matter of in less than 10 years. And the attrition rate the attrition rate in in our fire department has not been the same growth, has not followed the same line as the growth. So like what you're saying is that all the ones and twos that we've hired, they're retiring at their 20, 25 year mark. And we've lost all that seniority. But since we've grown so fast, we have all these 5-year guys.
Yes.
What my issue is that we still have guys with 15 to 20 years on, but they're not given the respect of with their years of service because they're told they don't contribute as much. They can't, we're not the department we used to be. And the company officers, and I'm not just saying this is our department, I've seen this countywide and I've seen it on the internet, that we're relying on 5, 10-year guys to be the senior man when there might be someone that is more senior than them.
Yeah, but there's so few of them and so many of the super young group that those senior men, even if they're viewed as lazy, but they're not lazy. They're taking their time because they've earned it, but they're kind of getting white noise. What's the word? They're getting washed out because there's so much other noise going around from that 5-year and under group. So what those guys say must be gold, and everybody else's voice gets carried out, so that you get missed in the crowd type of thing. So the lack of respect I could see, but by accident.
So there was an incident that happened where a junior guy was doing what he was supposed to do. He was doing his truck checks, and it might have been cold out. It wasn't cold enough not to go outside, but He took the saws off the rig. Bay doors were down, or bay doors were, they might have been open, but the saws were off the rig in the bay. There's the back of the firehouse, the bay opens up, and there's the front of the house, the bay opens up. He takes the saws off, puts them right outside the compartment in the truck bay, and fires up the saws and fills the truck bay up with
CO.
exhaust and CO from the 3 saws that they carry on the rig. Senior man goes over there. Now, does he talk loud? Yeah. Did he have to talk loud? Yeah, because the saws were running. And this junior man kind of took it personally that he was being yelled at, that he was running the saws inside. And the company officer got involved, and now there's an issue, and now the senior man might feel jaded because all he was doing is saying, hey, just take the saws outside, bro.
Yeah.
You know?
What? How long ago was that?
2 years ago, maybe.
Okay. Because I'm trying to think. About 3 days ago, I was working an overtime shift, and I fired up the saws in the truck bay with the door just cracked, but I didn't want to chance, I knew what was happening the day before. They were busy, and I wanted to make sure my saws were working, but it was also 4 degrees.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
I was a little lazy, but I cracked the door a little bit. I ran those saws.
Do we do it here at our firehouse? 100%. You know what we do, though? We take the saws and we put them almost right next to the bay door, and the bay door is opened up.
Yeah, plus we got all the fans and everything.
Right.
It works out. But it was the young kid. There was one of the young ones that's on your group I was working with, and we had just come in the morning, and I know he likes to do his truck checks, which I appreciate, but I don't like leaving the new kid, just to go do his own thing and hope he gets it right. I kind of like to monitor, and I wanted to go over some equipment anyways and double check some things that needed some cleaning up. But I try to jump in and out, let them do it, but keep an eye on them, but also being in there instead of just like, you absolutely could pour a cup of coffee, sit in the recliner, and let them do the whole check, fire up the saws, and hope they got everything down to 100%.
Yeah. I mean,
I just prefer to get out there and show them that they're not alone. Talking
about truck checks, I mean, I don't know if he was still Proby when he came over to our company and he's moving back to an engine. But the senior guy on my group caught him pencil whipping the truck check sheet.
Yep.
And so then it was like maybe 2 shifts or 3 shifts. The senior man poured his coffee and babysat. And I had nothing to do with it. This was all on the senior guy. All he did, he told me what was going on. I said, you're handling it? He goes, yep. Sorry, man, go with it. He sat out in the truck bay and made the Proby do the entire truck check again the day he caught him pencil whipping. And then he had to babysit him however many shifts until he got the point that we don't pencil whip truck checks here.
So that's actually what kind of started me down that path. That's same exact reason, same person. But instead of standing there and sipping coffee, I'm just watching him, making him do it. I wanted to go through it. So if it looked like it was a pain in my ass, it was definitely going to be a pain in his ass. But if I did it by example and show him that you're checking every freaking carabiner gate and everything else, like to an extreme, he's not going to skip. Be like, oh no, that's okay, I really screwed up. Got to make him feel it a little bit.
Yeah. But I posted on the Instagram today, and I was going to read it.
Yeah, read what you got.
Instead of discounting years of experience because a senior man appears to be lazy, maybe figure out why. Younger members can easily contribute more. The older you get, the less time you have for things. 5 years on the job with 100 certifications doesn't make you senior. It is also expected for younger members to contribute more. That's putting in the work to get where the 20 to 30-year members are. Maybe put your phone down and have a conversation with them, and your perception might change.
A couple things going on in there. One, you got to learn to approach other people. As a newer member, you should be approaching the senior man, introducing yourself, constantly trying to get to know them. The more you show your activity, the more it's going to draw that senior man out as well. there may be a reason he's purposely, or she is purposely, taking a step back to let you do more. And it kind of comes down to that probationary time. And it's a tool used by senior members and bosses that, there's a reason you're doing probie work, what we call probie work. If we can't trust you to stay on schedule taking out the trash, how am I going to trust you to have my back in the fire, inside a burning building or on the ropes, whatever it is? It's a very, very small detail, but the details do matter to a degree. They want you to get into that repertoire of over and over again and doing that stuff and being able to do it on your own, have that discipline so that you can be trusted with the next level of task. Eventually things will balance out. You'll be sitting at the card table. You'll be sitting, going out to dinner with the family, or you'll be going out and meeting outside the firehouse. You'll be doing all these things, but you have to earn it. And it starts with doing the probie work. Again, these are tools used by senior firefighters and bosses. Now, that doesn't mean that a senior fireman can also just use that as a
crutch.
Yeah, crutch. Be like, well, I got another probie again. Thank God I don't have to do trash work. I'll have to mop floors. You have to feather it. Don't forget, you're also the example. You're setting for these people. And that starts to get into the field where, okay, maybe somebody with 18 years on does deserve to relax a little bit. I don't know if I take that same stance. I can understand it and appreciate it, so long as that person has that conversation. Be like, hey, man, I'm not trying to be lazy. I'm trying to, do my thing here. I already did it for 10 years, and we didn't have, probies for the longest time. Okay, that's different. You're showing that there's an earned thing. If it is somebody that is just feet up in the recliner every day, maybe you earned it, but you don't have to rub it in. You're gonna... Now you're not massaging relationships. And being a senior man, one of your roles is that liaison role between the officer and the rest of the firefighters on that crew or out of that house, depending on how many you have. And you do set the example. You will be relied on to start training. You'll be relied on to share your knowledge, but nobody's going to listen to you if you're always sitting or always caught not pitching in with the chores. So there is a balance.
There is. And you remember Killer.
Mm-hmm.
This dude was one of the original hires in our department. I think I felt like when I got on the job, he already had 30 years, and he was the senior man of the fire department before he retired. And I would bet 75% of the time, he was the one getting the cleaning cart out, getting the mop out, or doing what had to be done before anybody else. Now, what I had to do as the most junior guy at the time, if he didn't do it, or if it was still my responsibility. He just did it. That was his habit. He was the most. If you had the definition of a creature of habit, his picture was be next to it in the Webster dictionary. He would come in, he'd take his pullover off. He had a coat hanger. He'd hang it on the same spot in the filing cabinet every day. Turn all the lights on in the firehouse, bang cupboards around. But he did it every day. And you just knew he was working because that's what he did. And he just dealt with it. My point is that it still was my responsibility as a junior fireman to make sure the cleaning was done. I knew he was going to do it most of the time. I still had to make sure it was done. And then the days that he didn't, I couldn't be like, hey, why isn't cleaning done today? I couldn't go up to him and say that because it's not his job. It was my job to do it. One of the first things that I was given after I got off probation, no, it's actually when I got on the job, is our buddy who was a senior man here. He gave me the key to the toilet paper dispensers. He goes, put this on your key ring because you're going to need it.
That's it.
Don't lose it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Welcome to the firehouse.
Yep.
That's a good one.
I don't know. I just feel that the senior guy is losing respect. That the senior guys that have the time on the job are losing respect for undue reasons. It just seems like seniority means nothing anymore.
I guess I can see that. I do think it's got to be earned, and it might it might be one of those positions where people who are considered senior by age, by the time that they have on, might need to take a it might be a period of reset, bring back senior man title, senior firefighter, and they might have to just essentially start over, do a little extra work to set that example to get that going again. Though I don't know if taking a step back and maybe not complaining, but pointing out, hey, I don't have enough respect, I'm the senior guy, I don't know if that's going to get you anywhere other than add to the problem of no one wants to listen to you. Like in their heads, they're already someone sitting by not doing the work, and
But
now
I
you're
think
going to
that,
complain.
and here as a company officer, I think it falls on the company officer to set that tone.
Oh, 100%. All problems are leadership problems, right?
Right.
That's the old saying.
Because if I had somebody come in my office right now and it had something to do with something was going on in the firehouse, had nothing to do with the equipment, had nothing to do with the truck, maybe even with something to do with the truck. Hey, did you talk to the senior guy first? Because he might know what's going on with it. He might know how to handle it. That's not something I need to handle until the senior guy can't handle it.
Unless they take the whole truck out for water leaking and it turns out the valve's open.
Right. But I think it falls on the company officer to give the senior guys the respect first. So then when the junior guys have issues, the company officer, hey, that's not a me problem yet. Handle it with a senior guy. They can't handle it. That's when I step in.
So, okay. So like we said, leadership problem, leadership solutions. How do you, as a company officer, monitor your senior men and guide them? Do you ever take them aside, set an expectation, or is it when they act up, you slap them around a little bit? Like, how do you navigate that? How do you keep them in line or keep them in their role?
So if we are getting a new probationary fireman or a fireman that hasn't been in this firehouse yet, I usually pull the senior man in the office and just give them a reminder of what we need to do. So that would more be of a constant, hey, we're getting somebody new. Hey, can I come talk to you? You're not in trouble. Just, hey, just come on in here. The door's not even shut. The door would probably still be open. Hey, just, get a cup of coffee. Let's go over some stuff. And then just almost like a battery recharge. Hey, we need to get back to, get out of the, we got to start being uncomfortable again because we have a new guy coming. If and when something happens, and it's usually if I catch a probie or a newer firefighter doing something that I don't approve of, I probably won't say anything to the probie. That's when I call the senior guy in again and say, hey, you got to get your shit in line. We got to get stuff squared away because this isn't going to fly anymore.
In terms of this, so you're telling the senior man to go and handle that probationary firefighter or square himself up so that it sets a better tone for the probation? Okay.
Both.
Okay. How is it working with the other bosses on your group? Do you guys confer with each other and kind of have that same mindset? Or is it just a program that you're kind of focusing on and they do something slightly different or maybe not at all?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, the bosses at my firehouse, usually if there's an issue with a guy on their group, I'll go to the boss and say, hey, this is what's going on. And hopefully he goes to his senior guy about it, which I know for the most part that happens. The company officer has way more stuff to deal with than did the floors get mopped? Did the trash get taken out? Is the toilet paper in the right way? Is there blue stuff in the toilet bowl to make sure it looked clean? Now, if I catch it and I know that, hey, the floors get mopped, the trash get taken out, can I address it with the probie? Yeah, I can, but that's why am I going to spend my leadership capital in coming down on him for not doing cleaning tasks?
Hmm.
It is my responsibility that the cleaning gets done. Like it falls on me. But I'd rather have the senior man. Hey, it's going to become better. It's going to be received better coming from the senior guy. Hey, the boss saw this, or hey, we get the cleaning done on these days. Let's make sure the cleaning gets done, and he can give his spin on it, whatever, however way he wants to spin it. What that also is doing is giving him time to lead. He might never want to be an officer, but he's getting that leadership experience in microdoses.
Yeah, no
Which,
doubt.
and if there's a time that he wants to be a boss, if that senior man, wants to promote, he's had little microdoses of how to manage people.
How does that play? How does the role of senior man play with your guys' just company level training? Do you dole that out? Do you let them kind of tackle it for the day? I know we have a schedule, a typical training calendar, but how does that work? How does that
So
filter in?
there are some days, like a day before a shift, I'll send my senior man a text message and say, "Hey, come up with a drill topic," and I put him on the spot. And it's good training for him, and it lets him take charge and take lead a little bit. Like I said, you as a company officer, you're still the buck stops with you, so you're in charge of all the training and stuff like that. But I put the onus on him. I'll just hit him with it the day before. Hey, come up with a drill, whatever drill you want. It's on you.
Does he
You can
come
do.
up with creative stuff, or is it just something he's pulling from a file and rereading?
It's usually it's 90% of the time he says, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I'm usually like, "I don't care, man. It's up to
Okay.
you." Um, Now if it's company level drill, like let's the other night we did 4th Century. I said, "Hey, let's just knock off the rust a little bit. Let's go pound on the door." What I wanted some of the scrap wood that we break to put in my wood stove.
Yep. Yep.
So we start the drill. I talk a little bit, and then the way it should go with every company drill and every firehouse is the senior man or maybe the guy that takes over. They start interjecting their knowledge. They start interjecting their experience. They start showing this works, this doesn't work. Because you want to know at the end of the day, unless you're a 2-man crew or possibly a 3-man crew, if you're like with us right now, we're a 4-man truck company. Me running the bar is probably not going to happen. I should be there instructing and doing it, but I should be more observing my guys and making sure they're doing things correctly. And then when the senior man's given his instruction of what this works, this doesn't work, your hand should be here, this is the way you should force it, you should put your foot here. If he's off a little bit, I can just very politely say, "Hey, that might work, but this is a better way. Try this way, see if you like this." I don't really go, "No, that's wrong." I never say, "No, no, that's wrong." I say, "Hey, that might work, but try it this way, see how you like it this way." But I'll start the drill. Like if it's a formal drill that I'm running, I usually start it, and probably 5 minutes in, the senior guy's already taken over and doing what he does.
That's cool. That's cool.
And that even happens with cooking. The only thing I'm allowed to cook because the recipe's in my head and I don't give it up is my chili. I could bring. Hey, I'm going to be making this tonight, and I'll bring dinner in, and I'll start peeling onions or whatever, start chopping onions. Next thing you know, the senior guy's nudging me out of the way. What are you doing? Well, I'm doing it now. Whatever, man. I'll go back in my office. Just let me know when dinner's ready.
Do you ever? I mean, do they ever let you cook?
I cooked the other night because I said we were making paninis, and it's one of those. It's an easy recipe, but it was like, "Oh, you're making them tonight." I was like, "All right, whatever. I'll make them."
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Cooking is a good tool to let people learn how to teach others. Just let somebody. It doesn't have to be the senior guy, but it could be the probie. It doesn't matter who it is. You tell somebody, hey, you're in charge of dinner tonight, but you got to show us all how you do it. You got to show us how to cook it.
Well, I'm not
You
showing you
know,
how to do my chili. That's
that's understandable. We got a family secret recipe in there, sure. But there was like, so one of the new kids, we were busting his chops. It started with, hey, you seeing anybody? No, no. Well, I got something on the line. I don't know. Oh, you can take her on a date? Oh, yeah, I think so. Where are you going? Like, don't tell me McDonald's. And he's okay. He had a kind of a half-assed plan, whatever. Like, it'd be really good. You should learn how to cook. It'll seal the deal. Well, I don't know how to cook anything. Guess what we're doing for the next month? We're just rolling through recipes. And the kid, he was learning all these, he's writing shit down, but he's actually learning, and you got everybody involved. Everybody's teaching something to this new kid to the point where, then he can come in, and he did a recipe that he came, and it just goes around and to the point where, the new kid comes in, brings a recipe. All right, I got one. I want to try it. Let me teach you guys something now. You get this little thing, this little competition going, but it's this little micro, because it's not an official drill. Nobody feels like they're on the spot. You get them talking to each other in a very informal instructional level. It's a good start, but it's great for like the senior guys too to, all right, man, let me pass you down a firehouse recipe here.
right. Well, it's like TZ's chicken recipe.
Yeah.
He doesn't cook it anymore, but that's his recipe. Now the guys are cooking it.
Oh yeah. It's a staple.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. It's fun. I don't know about doing it for 12 to 15 people. That's a bit much, but
Right.
all right. Well, I gotta play along, gotta learn.
But, just vacuuming in the firehouse. Senior man's got the vacuum out. He's vacuuming.
Yeah, that probie should be trying to take it out of his hand.
Well, he might be doing something else. He might be. There's, and that's a lot of times is. It just happened It just happened when we had that really cold spell. It was like 0 degrees out, where I don't think you could put enough water on the floor to get rid of the salt. I got up at my usual time at the firehouse, which is usually 10 to 6. And I walked into the living quarters in the kitchen, pour myself a cup, make coffee, and pour myself coffee. And the floors didn't get mopped. And it's like, not a big deal. It'll get, I was like, I'll just get them done right now. I start mopping the floor. And my probie gets up around, 6 o'clock ish. If he hears me rustling in bed, he usually tries to get out of bed before I do. But I already got the living quarters mopped, and I started mopping the kitchen. And he shows up with just a mop in his hand. I said, "Oh, you're looking for the mop bucket?" He goes, "Yeah, you beat me out of bed this morning." I was like, "Yeah, whatever. I can get it done. It's just mopping." But he knew he left the floors for the morning, and his whole plan was to get him done when he woke up, so they looked fresh for the next crew.
Yeah, it's nice of him.
Right.
Nice of him to leave it for the boss.
Whatever. I can put a mop in my hand. But back to the senior guy. I've seen the senior guys on multiple groups. Now, in our firehouse, the dishwasher gets ran once a day. It's not like at our headquarters where that's like a dispatcher duty. Seems like the dishwasher is. In our group, dishwasher gets ran at night. In the morning, it gets emptied. And it's like an unspoken rule. It's whoever's up first is the one that's emptying the dishwasher. Now, there have been times where I've been relieved by one of the lieutenants here, and he's in here before anybody else is up because we might have had a long night. And there's lieutenants emptying the dishwasher. I've seen the senior man in your group emptying the dishwasher. The senior man in my group emptying the dishwasher.
I usually do it when I come in, but that's because the coffee pot's in there. So
yeah,
if I open that up, that light goes off, and I'm going to be got. So I might as well just empty it all.
Right. But that's what a senior man should be doing. It's not like, oh, the dishwasher's run. I'm the only one up. I'll just leave it for the probie. No, open up the dishwasher, start emptying it. I'm sure as soon as a probie gets up, or even the junior fireman gets up, they're going to come in there and start helping you, or they're going to do something else that that they
Yeah.
should be doing.
Yeah. I think we've mentioned this one before, and it keeps popping in my head as we're talking, because we're kind of okay. We're sticking on with the senior man, but it's kind of their role with how they interact with the probationary members. Just seems like those are our two groups right now, at least in our department. One of your probationary dudes, we're talking like 8 years ago, 9 years ago. He said the best advice he gave me before he left was don't let anybody out probe you. And I always give that same advice to every academy group, usually on their last day. As if I can leave you with one piece of advice, it's don't let anybody. I always give him the credit. He was the one that said it. He knows who he is if he listens. Don't let anybody out probe you. And I love that sentence because that means that if you're 10 years on, if you're 15 years on, even if you're 19 years on, and you see it needs to be done, get it done. And if you can start to gamify it a little bit, and if you can get that done or get that started, and a probationary, comes walking out of the bunk room or whatever, he's going to want to get that. No, the hell, the senior guy will not do that. I'm going to grab that mop. Or, if the boss is grabbing the mop, yeah, he should be trying to take it out of your hands. All right. If you say, hey, I'm just going to get this done real quick. I need to do something, understandable. But it kind of keeps that up and going, keeps that momentum going with it. That
Yeah,
respect.
that's a great mindset to have. Is don't let it, like you said, don't let anybody out probe you, and you should keep that with you, like you said, throughout your whole career. One of the cool things I do enjoy watching, even though I kind of snicker at it a couple, every once in a while, is working overtime shifts at the other firehouse where there's two companies, and you see the probie fighting over, clearing the dishes or who's going to get the mop first, or who's going to do dishes first. It's cool to see that. Sometimes I think it's a little overboard the way they act, but
Depends on the group.
it's still a good mindset to have. But there's been times where I've been mopping, or I'll get the hose out just to rinse the salt off the truck, and it's not always a probie. He might be doing something else, but the junior man comes up and says, "Hey, boss, I got it." And usually I go, my hands still work. I can still squirt. I can still run a garden hose to wash the rig off. Go find something else to do. And then you usually grab it out of my hands, and I walk away and drink coffee. And
you missed a spot.
But that's right. But that's how it should work. The boss isn't exempt. The senior man isn't exempt from doing this stuff. The senior man and even the boss, if I have nothing to do in the office, I should be out doing stuff with the guys. Senior man, should he be the first? That's up for debate. Should he be the first one to get up and do things? Depends. The probie should be already there because that should be his mindset. But like if you said, if don't let anybody out probe you, the senior man should be the first one to get up and do things. It's almost like church. If you're a good Catholic boy,
oh boy,
my wife's side of the family has like this rule, and I might have seen it maybe a handful of times since on my wife's side, and it's usually at church. It's around the holidays or a wedding or something like that. When the priest stands up from his chair to read from the gospel, the whole congregation stands up.
Okay.
Right? The rule on my wife's side is that you will be standing before the priest stands. And that's almost like, so if the senior man's about to get up to start clearing the table, that probie should be up clearing the table and taking dishes out of their hand. And that happens to me all the time, but I kind of sneak attack it just to make a point that I'm still quicker than you. Like I'll get up and I'll start clearing dishes when they're, they pull their
still eating.
Well, yeah, they'll still eat. Or we try to not have their phones out at the table, but dinner's done. We're just shooting the breeze or whatever, Guys are pulling their phones out, whatever, checking the Instagram. And as soon as I see those phones out and they start getting lost in the doom scrolling, that's when I make my move. Stand up, grab as many dishes as I can, and that usually makes a point. The boss is getting the dishes. The one thing I will say is it's kind of weird, and I've tried to. It doesn't happen, and I don't know why. And I think it's our probie showing respect, but it should be the other way around. And I would have to put food on his plate for him. Is one, the officer always eats last, always gets served last. That's a rule, universal rule. To me, the probie should be the one eating first, because then they should be done first. Then they can clear everybody else's plate if that's how you work. But the probie should be the one eating first, because they're probably doing the most work. They need the nourishment or whatever. They're probably working harder than anybody else. Our probie shows a lot of respect to the senior guy, where he won't put anything on his plate until the senior man gets food on his plate. And I'm okay with it. But in reality, I think the probie should get food on the plate first. Me, whatever, just give me the scraps when they're done,
Yeah, I don't care either.
Yeah. But it's always a battle at the table of it's who's gonna break the ice and serve themselves dinner first.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, I'm not going to put food on my plate until you guys get your food and pick what you want. Then usually, if it's steak night, they're always giving me the biggest. I don't want the biggest steak.
I do.
I can't. I can't eat.
Here's the trick. You always go for one of the smallest ones and let the smallest guy take the biggest steak, because now you get 1.5 steaks by the end of it.
Because you can't finish it.
You know what I mean?
That's how it is like to having kids.
That's right. That's what we do at home too.
Yeah, I always know whatever my youngest is ordering. I know I'm having either leftovers the next day of that meal, or I'm just order something small for myself because I'm gonna have to finish her dinner. But we're kind of going in circles here about this whole senior man thing. It just, I think we said this before.
It's the liaison. It's the go between the official definition type of stuff. Okay, going back to defining stuff at the beginning. So you in the fire service and pretty much any managerial role, which we were going to roll into anyways, is okay. You have your formal leadership and you have your informal leadership, and these are classic things. This is not just fire service. You have that boss within, right? So you have a boss, we call boss, but typically a boss is a manager. They just keep status quo. And then you have a leader. Sometimes you can have a boss who is a leader, but a leader can also be somebody who's not a boss. Sounds like we're talking in circles, but it's not. When you have a leader that's inside the pack that is not officially titled as some sort of boss, some sort of managerial role, that's your informal leader. People will naturally flock.
I kind of equate, if you look at the military, kind of equate the senior men and the officers with senior men would be your NCOs, and your company officers would be your lieutenants in the military. So think of it, who's the voice guy for Coors?
Oh, I'm
Sam,
not
sure. Sam, what's his name?
Sam Elliott?
Sam Elliott.
That's what you remember him from, not the cowboy from the dude abides.
Well, I was gonna. Wasn't he the? Wait, maybe he wasn't the NCO for We Were Soldiers Once and Young.
I'm not sure.
I gotta look it up.
I know he was actually in the military.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if you've seen the commercials, yeah. Sam Elliott was the sergeant major, and Mel Gibson played Hal Moore.
Okay.
And
I have not seen it.
So I've seen it, read the book. Awesome books. It's a good movie. But if you look at Sam Elliott's character, the person he plays, the sergeant major, he was Hal Moore's right-hand man. Sergeant major is a non-commissioned officer. That's like your senior. That's like the senior guy. Hal Moore went to him for stuff. The sergeant major took care of problems that Hal Moore didn't even know were problems. That's how it should be in the firehouse. The senior man should be taking care of issues that are. He might not even have to tell the officer that it happened. The officer might find out, and it was like, "Hey, I heard about this." The senior guy would be like, "Yeah, no issue, no problem. It's been handled. Officer should be like, all right, roger that. Copy that, whatever. The only time problems should come into this office is when the senior man can't handle it. That's just the way I feel about things.
So you're talking not punitive. What's a
Formal?
yeah.
I mean, I don't ever want it to get to a formal discipline. Have I written a council memo before? Yeah. A counseling memo, is it a form of discipline? Yes, but it's not. A counseling memo is just saying, hey, I've talked to you about this. We're just making sure this is just a written record that you've been spoken to about this issue. To me, there's levels that need to be crossed before we even get to a counseling memo. If let's just say the probie's late for work, maybe he's late one time, and I speak to him, hey, you were late for work. Am I going to give him a counseling memo at that point? No. Hopefully whoever he was holding over for just kind of says, yeah, whatever, I held over for him, and it is what it is. I hope, and I know it will happen. I don't say I hope. I know it will happen. My senior man will talk to the probationary fireman and say, look, dude, you can't be late to work. You should be one of the first ones to work. And it should never happen again. If it happens again, it might be a different and the senior man's already tried to handle it. Then it's him being pulled in the office. And it's just a verbal, hey, can't be late. This is what's going on. And then I follow it up with an email. And there's just, the email is more of documentation that I have verbally talked to this person that they were late. And I email it and I save the email. And there's a read receipt. So I know he read it. So they can't say, oh, I never got that email and I never was spoken to. With the probie being late, after we talked about going to that verbal discipline, followed up by email for documentation. The problem, we'll circle back to what this whole conversation was about, was who is the senior guy in the firehouse? If you have a 19-year-old dude or female, let's just throw it out there. Say a late bloomer gets hired, 30 years old, or we've even had 42-year-old get hired, who's one of the senior guys now. He's hired at we'll just say 30 years old, and the way some of these people on social media and around other firehouses, they're saying years of service don't matter. It's what you contribute is what matters. Well, if you have a 30-year-old guy that is a probationary fireman, and you have a 5-year member who got in young when he's 20, so he's got 5 years on the job, but he's looked at as the quote-unquote senior guy because he contributes more to the firehouse. But then there's a senior man that's got 17 years on, and he's in his mid-50s, looking, retirement is on the horizon. But maybe because of the generational issues we have going on, they've written off that years of experience, and they're not considering that a senior man anymore because he isn't, in their eyes or in guys' eyes, he's not contributing to the fire service the way they think he should. Well, he already contributed 17, 18, 19 years. So now you're going to have the company officer rely on a 5-year guy who's got 5 years less of life experience to counsel a 30-year-old probie about not being late. Put yourself in that
Yeah,
shoes.
exactly.
Can you imagine if you were hired? How old were you when you got hired?
27.
27. So that's probably a good age to get hired. I mean, we're hiring a lot of young guys. You get hired at 27, and we have some guys here that are hired at 19, 20 years old, and they put their 5 years in, and now they're 25. So now you have, when you got hired at 27, they've had 5 years on, they're 25. You still got 2 years more of life experience on you. And who knows what your background is. You did how many years of volunteer fire service, whatever. And you have a dude here that, because we've labeled them as a senior man because how much they contribute in that 5 years, now that we've relied on them as a senior man, they're going to counsel you. You're going to look at them and give them the middle finger and say, F off, dude. Who are you? You shouldn't, but that's just human nature. Now, if you rely on the guy that has that 17, 18 years in the fire service, maybe even 20 years, and he loves what he's doing, but he's 20 years. He's earned that time to do whatever he wants to do as a senior man, and he comes up to you and he says, hey, bro, let me talk to you for a second. I know, life happens. You got to work on how to get here on time. I've been in your shoes. He can relate to you because he's been 30 years or 27 years old already.
Right, yeah.
The 25-year-old hasn't been where you are. Just laws of nature. He's younger than you. He hasn't lived in your shoes. He doesn't know what's going on. He might not even have family yet. Like, take for instance, like right now, let's just throw out if I was a fireman and a probationary fireman at this point in my time. I'm not saying, as I'm 40 years old. Family of 3, just got a new puppy. Before the puppy, I was up at 4:30 in the morning, at the gym by 5:30, at the firehouse by 6:15. Now with a puppy, because we're trying not to get the dog in a routine of getting up so early to go to the bathroom, I'm not getting up at 4:30 in the morning to get my coffee and everything else before I go to the gym. I'm getting up at 5:50 because I know my son gets up at 6 o'clock, so at least I can get the dog out, get him out, go to the bathroom, and then my son can take over. So now I'm not getting to the firehouse until 6:30, 6:45. But it's a change of life. Someone that's 25 years old is not going to have that experience, or they might not have that situation going on at home.
No, they're probably getting up at 6:40 and rolling out the door, and they 10 minutes too.
Right.
If they're in that kind of groove. A lot of people don't. I mean, we're still getting a lot of young guys that they're showing up 6 o'clock, 6:15, which is awesome to see, but they just got up and went. They don't have anything going on. Like prior to, like you said, you're kind of like getting your house up before you come to the firehouse.
And that's the point I'm trying to make is like, so, and there's one group in particular, actually a couple groups, they're at the firehouse at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's awesome. They don't have a problem with guys being late.
Right.
But if someone does show up late and the senior man has to talk to him, who's the senior guy that's going to talk to him? They're all young.
Right.
So,
all right. So there was one thing there that you said I kind of want to hit on. It's the person who's contributed the most. How would you define that? What does that mean, contribute? What is that, ass in a seat the most? Is that somebody who takes charge of the training for the day?
I don't think there's a very good definition of it because, like I said, you have in a very young fire department, and we're not young. We've had career firefighters in our department since 1984. 40 years of career firemen. In the past couple of years, we've hired a lot of people. So we are young in age and experience. All the guys that were original are long gone and retired. I don't think, besides the one battalion chief, I would call him the old guard.
And I think the one guy in my group, right?
And he's retiring.
Yeah, he's retiring.
And he's retiring.
Which we just found out.
Right. So let's take the guy in your group that's retiring. He's got how many years? 27?
I know at least 25.
Okay, so we'll say 25 years. In that 25 years, how much has he contributed to the fire department?
I don't know.
You don't know.
That's the problem.
Right.
I don't
you've
know.
Been here
I
for
see what I see.
You've been here for how many years?
Total 11 or 12.
As a paid fireman.
As paid 8.
So 8. So you've seen his
9. 9.
So you've seen his you've seen him where he was already able to retire. He's already had what I consider the FU time. He's hit his 20, and now he has. I can retire at any point I want. So you've seen a third of his career, and you don't know how much he's contributed.
That is true. That's 100% true.
And you look at the senior guy we've been talking about on the other group who was hired at the same time as I have, 17 years ago, almost, it'll be 18 years in September. All the guys that have got hired in the past 5 years have seen 1/3 of his career. And on top of that, he did how many years of the volunteer fire service here?
That I don't know.
A long time.
I didn't know that. Somebody just recently mentioned that he was a volunteer prior.
Yeah.
So I thought he just kind of took the test and swapped careers.
So he's been with this fire department longer than some guys have been alive.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, so are you supposed to just assume and give everybody the benefit of the doubt that they were a superstar in their younger years and they've earned that time? Or, like, is it normal to, the way I see some of the, not here, but other places as well, your senior man a lot of people tend to just slack off their last few years. So are you got that senioritis, or are you supposed to be, like, in my heart, I feel that being a senior man is you have to overcome that. You do want to slip. You know you've did your time. You know you did all the chores. You know you worked on it hard. Yeah, you did earn some sort of degree of leniency, but I don't think that gives anybody the excuse to not do anything.
No, you're right. You're right.
Like, to be a senior man, you can't. I would hate if somebody came in with 30 years of experience, or somebody's here with 30 years of experience, and the last 5 that I saw, because I'm at a 5-year mark, I saw them do nothing, and then they scold me for maybe showing up late or doing something little, but they have done nothing to build me up along the way. I'm not going to take any advice from that person.
I get.
You see what I'm saying?
I see exactly what you're saying. What you have to come in with is you have to give them respect. They have the time on the job.
An assumed respect.
Assumed respect.
Okay, that's fair.
Then, with your, I would just even say you still have to have that assumed respect up to your 5 years.
Okay.
And then make your assumptions after that, because you don't know what's going on with them. You don't know what they did in their career.
That is true.
And you hit the nail on the head with our friend who works here now, transfer to the city. You should never get out probied.
Yeah.
That's an awesome line. The senior status in the fire service has lost some of its luster or clout. At least the going trend around here, seniority means nothing for overtime. Seniority, really the only thing seniority gets you is first right of refusal on vacation and preference on emergency overtime. Now we're talking career service.
Yeah.
In the volunteer, so go back to my volunteer times. Senior guys, we get back from run, trucks always got washed. So what do you think the senior guys were doing?
I've seen both. I've seen some of them scoot right inside.
Some scoot right inside, grab a pop or whatever.
I've seen some go straight for they're the ones initiating that wash.
You know but who are the ones washing it and who are the ones rinsing it?
Oh, yeah. The senior guy gets the hose.
The senior guy gets the hose.
Just squirting everybody and shit. Yeah.
It goes back to our friend who's a battalion chief to the north. He always tells a story about his senior guy that would that when they would wash a rig, he would just say, "I got a wheel. I got my wheel." And they knew, all right, he was taking part in the ritual of washing the truck at the end of the night, and he was washing a wheel. He was out there doing it. He wasn't really washing everything else. Washing wheels is important. If anybody doesn't, do you know the history of washing wheels in the fire service?
No.
So washing wheels in the fire service dates back to when we had horse-drawn fire apparatus.
Okay. The original, the wagon.
The wagon. Even the steamers that were being pulled by horses. If you don't know, horses poop. And when they would poop, the fire apparatus would roll over the poop and get shit all over the place.
Okay.
So it was very important to wash the wheels when they got back to the firehouse so it wasn't caked with horse manure.
So who's shitting on this guy's wheel?
It's just a tradition. They also used to wash the bottom of those apparatus with kerosene. But the point, your point is valid that the senior guy needs to take part in stuff. But at the same point, if the senior guy wants to put his legs up in the recliner for, you know, we're a 4-man apparatus. If the 2 junior guys are out there washing the rig and he doesn't get out to it, that's...
This might just be a generational thing, because I think I fall between 2 different ones, really. You know, I mean, I deal mostly with this younger generation, which they kind of drive me up a wall, but I'm learning a lot from them. But a lot of them are like, they believe everything is owed to them from the get-go.
Right. Now,
And the older the generation, just the 2 generations before me, rather, so mine and the one ahead, really are, they're of the mindset, nothing's owed to me. I have to work hard for it.
To go back to washing a rig, and this is the same point. When I was a fireman on the line, on the engine company, my senior man, who's now retired, he was the first one to wash the rig. He'd wash the whole rig himself before me, and I was the junior guy. He'd have the whole rig washed before me and the other firemen even got out there. But you know what he never did? Clean toilets. That was our job.
Okay. I can see that.
So, it's... Did he ever bust our balls for not washing? Because he enjoyed washing, and that was like old school here. These trucks were washed all the time. And if, we get back from a run, we'd rinse them. And at night, they got washed. And at the shift, they got washed. Now we have SOGs and policies because we've, messed up a couple doors, broke a couple windows because of the water and the freezing temperatures. When it gets so cold out, we don't wash them anymore. I will say there are guys here that look at this truck and they're like, Cab, do you mind if we wash it?
I did it the other night, and then we went out for a run right after. And I'm like, but it was so caked you couldn't open up. You were damned if you do, damned if you don't.
So I was like, wash it. We'll turn on we'll crank up the thermostat in the truck bay just so it dries a little bit. But the guys want to wash, and we're going off on a tangent here about washing rigs. But to your point, the senior man has contributed. Should he still contribute? 100%. But you can't write off. Guys can't, and that's what's happening here, is guys are writing off the years prior to them knowing them.
I think you're right. And I definitely do that myself. I fall into that category. I write people off if I see them slacking because I assume they're just lazy. And I don't know their history.
They could be lazy. They could.
But I don't think I'm open, other than this, now everybody's hearing it, but other than this, I don't think I'm open about that, except for I recognize that and go, I don't want to be that. Now, there's days I catch myself missing a chore because these guys hop too before, I get to it, then I'm like, I feel bad about it.
And that's always a good lesson to have. I mean, you learn from your good bosses, you learn from your bad bosses, you learn from your good senior men, you learn from your bad senior men. You should want to mimic the good ones and learn from the bad ones. Like, I'm not going to do that. And that's what I've done in my career. Like, I had good bosses, I had bad bosses. And whoever hears this and knows me, they know who and what we're talking about. There is some stuff that I had excellent fireground officers. Firehouse officers, different story. And that's where company officers make their living, is in the firehouse.
Okay.
Going through my career coming up as a fireman, I look at some officers and I was like, I don't like the way he did that. I'm not going to do that in my career. Then there's other officers like, that's the way I should be when I become an officer. Firemen should be doing the same thing with their senior men. And we talk about the senior guy that got hired with me. Mm-hmm. He's the fireman everybody should be wanting to be like.
He's that informal leader. He's the guy that I want to be as a fireman,
but
for sure.
The problem is that they discredit, or they don't even give him credit for the however many years of service he had, because they just don't know. And then they just it's just, he's just being a loudmouth today. He just talks loud,
He's the first, yeah, especially at 6 a.m. That's a good point, because looking back, like he's okay, like inside the firehouse, or at least in our district, he's definitely my hero. I mean, he's the guy I look up to. I aspire to be. But I also saw him when he was on. Right now, he's on the line, but he's in a aide position. So I think he's been there for so long. A lot of the newer guys have not seen him in the firefighter capacity that he truly is.
He's a freaking animal.
Yes, he is.
But you got guys that.
So I saw that. These guys don't.
There's guys that work on the group that just, he tried to do some things, and then he gets a talking to by the officer, and the next thing you know, he just
shuts down.
He shuts down, and it's not right. The dude, he is the epitome of a senior man. But not here. And I think that's the growing sentiment in the fire service right now.
So how would you fix that? Would that be some sort of policy making?
No, it starts with the company officer.
All right, what would you do?
The company officer's got to respect the senior guy. I don't know how to change it. Me, third generation fireman, grandfather, father were both volunteer firemen here. I was the first to be hired as a paid fireman just by, had nothing else going for me at the time. But my father's friends, a lot of paid firemen, grew up in the firehouse, city firemen. So I've had influences outside of the confines of our fire department. And I've seen how fire departments, old school, because relatively we're young. The career side of this firehouse is 40 years old. You take the city that's next to us, they've been around since I don't know. I don't know the.
I don't know.
I've read the history book on that fire department, but I can't spout off the inception of the career staff in the city. But I've been around enough of those guys where I've seen how the senior man works there, and we talked to Mike about it. He's got a couple years on, but there's still senior men in that firehouse that still have clout, and I think that comes with the good company officer. The good company officer needs to rely on the senior man.
It sounds like, after talking to him, it sounds like him and I were just having a conversation similar to this, and it sounds like his officer does rely on the day-to-day to be the flow goes through the senior guy.
So I know some groups, because I work in overtime, and I think it's awesome that they do it, when they do a morning briefing. Mm-hmm. They sit at the table, and they give the briefing to a fireman to do. Who does that briefing?
I've seen it rotate. It's different on every.
It should be the senior man every time.
Group.
It should be the senior man every time.
Okay.
If it's not the company officer, it should be the senior man doing the briefing. And if the senior man's not there, it goes to the next senior guy. That's one way it gets fixed. Because then it shows a little bit of authority and a little bit of trust that the company officer is giving that senior man. The senior man's going to run the company officer runs the day, but it should run through the senior man.
Okay.
And that's one way it can start. The briefing should go, if we're going to do a brief, and if we're going to do an informal brief and the officer is not giving the brief, the senior man should be giving the brief.
So what happens if you have, so like your senior guy right now, you've been working with him for a bit. So you kind of trust, there's been a trust that develops. What if you get a new senior guy, you just automatically give him that thing? Or is that also kind of their, when do you step in? Do you still pull them aside? And not in front of everybody and be like, hey, whoa, I just need to give you a little guidance here because way off base.
If the group's got changed and I got a new senior guy on, or someone transferred in and my senior guy is no longer the senior guy, I take over the briefs.
Okay.
If we're just talking about this morning briefing thing, I take over the morning brief. I give almost like a feel out period to the senior guy. Now, a senior guy in this fire department I've probably known for a while. I've probably got a good handle on who he is and how he operates. But you got to give some time for that senior man to get his feet wet in how the company runs. He should be coming in with he's still the senior man, but he's coming into a new company. He should be like, all right, let me see how things run for a little bit. Then once that trust is gained and earned, that's when, hey, I pull him in the office. Hey, next shift, you're going to start giving the briefs.
So not just with you, but also trust gained with the rest of the members, the rest of the crew.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I mean, if you were back in our company right now, because right now you're detailed over, and you would be the senior man here once the senior man retires.
Jesus. Oh, that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
That's not enough time.
But you
not
would
enough time.
You would be. Your lieutenant's gonna have to trust in you to, run drills.
Which we do at the company level, but it's it's 4 people.
Right. And it's not saying you're running a multi-company drill. It's like, hey, for instance, there are days where the company officer is bogged down with computer work. They're bogged down with emails and fight reports and all this other stuff. The training still needs to get done.
Mm-hmm.
The senior man can start it. Hey, boss, we're gonna be out in the truck bay working on, the high point or whatever you want to pick for a drill.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, and then go start it. I'll be out there as soon as I finish up this email. I gotta get, with me, it's like if I don't finish that thought's gone.
Yeah.
It's in the cloud, it's gone. So, hey, let me just finish up I got like 5 minutes of work left. I'll be out there, start without me. I'll pick up where you guys leave off. That's what the senior man should be doing. Starting stuff like that. Then the company officer, if he comes in and the senior man's doing a great job with it, let him run with it. Just participate as the officer or stand back and watch a little bit. Then if something's not, the way it should be, I have like a 80% rule. If it's going to work for 80% of the time, why am I going to worry about the other 20%? Now, if something's unsafe and it might hurt somebody, that's when I'm going to step in. Hey, we really shouldn't be doing this. It's unsafe. But if senior guys got a plan, or even the junior guys got a plan for the drill, and they're showing something, and it might not be the way I want it done or the way I would do it, but it's going to work for 80% of the time. Yeah, go ahead, do it. What do I care? You're the one that's got to do all the work. If I have an easier way, they're the ones that got to do the task. So why am I interjecting the way I would do it when that's the way they want to do it? Now, if they continue to do it and it doesn't work and it struggles, that's when I come in and say, hey, that does work. Let me show you the way I would do it. If you like it, cool. If you don't, keep doing what you're doing. But if it doesn't work, you drop down to that 70%, 60%, or a 50-50, we're going to change things up.
That's 50-50. The guy that you were talking about, so it's Mike's uncle, right? Is that the same one you were talking about? What you were considering? Oh, so he was actually my very first senior guy. So when I first started volunteering, I didn't know any of these people. I just moved to the area, had no idea. And the battalion chief out of that company said, hey, see that tall, lanky guy? Just follow his coat. Wherever he goes, you go. Just listen to him. Like, okay, and they kind of explain the senior man thing. You just tag along with somebody who's got more experience. That's pretty much it. Okay, and taught a lot of cool tricks and, kind of really taught me fireman basics. And then I went to Firefighter 1. At the time, it was Firefighter 1, later on Firefighter 2, and so on and so forth. But it was whatever he did, I just kept repeating or adding on to what he was showing me. And then later I found out he was a city guy. I had no idea, but like...
I was talking about our North Greece fireman.
Okay.
His father.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Might as well be the same thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question since you brought this up. I just thought, it just popped in my head. Do you think it's easier to find a senior guy like that in the volunteer fire service now than it is in the career fire service?
Easier to find a senior guy?
A senior guy like Mike's uncle.
Yes, I think so.
I would agree with that.
I think so, because people tend to stick around longer.
But here's the thing.
That doesn't always mean that they're right.
Correct. Well, that, and they would just,
they're doing things correctly.
They're doing, right. So, when you were volunteering where you live, how many young guys were there?
At least about 10.
And how many old guys were there?
It seemed like 50.
So how many of those young guys that came in kind of just wrote off the old guys because they're old?
different place, huge gap. By 50, we're talking also like 50 years of difference, age difference. So it was really responding on the regular was really those same 10 guys, with maybe 3 or 4 people had about 10 years, 15 years on, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's not like everybody's grasping from the people that were way back in the 80s, doing it. That experience wasn't being transferred down, but the people who've been in for 15 years or so, they were transferring information down and how this place operates, how we go on jobs, and
Were
things
they
of that
acting
nature.
like the senior guys?
I'd say yeah, a little bit. All those 15-year markers, they happen to be chiefs and deputy chiefs or assistant chiefs, so they're all in some sort of rank.
Yeah.
They weren't like on the line. So it was always like the 10 newer guys where they were just the only firemen.
So going back to my volunteer time,
It's different.
who's a commissioner now? It seems like this place was built around him. He was a member of the same firehouse I was, and he was at the time when we were still interior. Everybody was an interior fireman, and they transitioned to an exterior status at some point in my career. But when I got in as a volunteer, everybody was interior, and this dude was like 60-something years old and an interior fireman. Now, nobody was going to think he was going to put on an air pack and go in and fight a fire. But his experience in this department, like, he's like a walking history book of this. He could tell you about every fire truck we've ever purchased. He could tell you about almost every brick that's laid for any of these firehouses here. I respected the hell. I still respect. I mean, he gets on people's nerves. When I was in the volunteer, I looked up to him for guidance on a lot of things. There was a time when we ran. It was a 55-gallon drum on fire, off gassing, and it was just me and him on the Quint at like 1 o'clock in the morning. But this is before the career staff went 24 hours a day here.
Okay.
And I looked at him and I said, I got 2 seconds on volunteer fire service. I just graduated firefighter 1. What do you want me to do here, And he guided me through it, He wasn't putting an air pack on to guide me through it, but, got some more dudes there and handled the incident. But
So I think every department and sometimes every station starts to have their own concept of what that senior man does, and somehow that starts to translate from house to house, not just at our own department, but other departments as well, that, hey, I just want you to focus on your senior man, almost as if they're subtly saying, don't listen to another senior man. And if you go work on another group or go volunteer in another house, don't listen to them, just focus on what we tell you. And you get this like reverse cross-pollination happening, that's, if that makes sense. I feel like that's part of a breakdown as well.
see, and that's where the company officer should come in and be like, the company officer shouldn't be telling guys that.
I would think you're right.
Each fire department, and I'm pretty sure this is how it is across the country. Each fire department is a fire department, and then each firehouse is is almost like their own little family, and they have all their little hierarchies in that family. And the fire department's like the extended family, and you might have a second cousin coming in and visiting with you for a night or two. It'd be like being detailed over, or you got some overtime. You got to adhere. You got to conform to the way that company operates. Everybody's operating out of that same SOG book, but it's almost like a family recipe. You got the great grandmother from Ireland, and it's got some Cold Cannon recipe. Now, if you don't know what Cold Cannon is,
To die for.
look it up.
It's absolutely to die for.
That recipe gets passed down. The way my grandmother might interpret it might be different from the way her sister interprets it. So now you have the same recipe, 2 sisters that are making this Cold Cannon dish. It's the same, but it's slightly different. That's kind of how the firehouse is.
All right,
You had the same SOGs, same SOPs, but they might have a slight interpretation difference And so you have two different ways of operating. They're pretty close.
That's actually an excellent way of putting it. Yeah, I'm thinking, for a minute there, I was thinking National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You know, you get Cousin Eddie showing up. Like, oh, great. This is our overtime guy. You know? But
It's an
with the
RV,
recipe,
Clark.
yeah, the shitter's full. But to your point, with the recipe, you know, it calls for butter. Wow, I got margarine. What's the difference? You know?
Okay, you want
it's doing the same thing.
It could still be butter. Someone uses grass-fed butter. Someone uses regular butter.
Yeah.
Someone uses organic butter. Someone uses non-organic
Ghee,
butter. Right.
you know?
Someone uses it. It's still gonna be Coal Cannon. It's just not gonna be. It's slightly different.
Let's see. All right, so fixing that. How could you reintroduce? What if it's a volunteer organization that does not subscribe to any particular senior man program? What would be advice for them if they're looking to start something?
You got to identify who the senior guys are.
And is that by, again, going back, is that time in the seat? Is that amount of certifications? Or what's your rubric?
The problem with certifications, the problem with training is that there are some people out there that now, not in the volunteer fire service. The volunteers, if they're going to training, they want to go train because they're taking time off from their jobs. They're probably losing money or vacation time to go train for these classes. They might even be paying it out of their own pocket. So I think the training certificates hold a little more clout on the volunteer side than they do on the career side, just for that point alone. On the career side, you're going to train and you're getting paid. And depending on how your schedule lays out, you might be getting paid a lot. And you don't have to pay to take the training because your department most likely is paying for it. Now, there are departments out there that make you get work subs and swap. They'll pay for the training, but they're not going to pay you to be at the training type of thing. That's a whole union issue. But back to the volunteer side, I think the training certificates or the how much training you have should play a decent role. Now, everybody knows somebody could take all the trainings they want, and then as soon as they're done with their training class, they forget how to tie their shoes. You know, I'm a rope technician level, 17. That doesn't exist, but
I'm a black belt.
Right. But then you're like, well, why do you wear Velcro shoes?
Yeah, exactly.
So it goes back to almost like when we had our training discussion about vetting classes. You should also be vetting your personnel that came back and took the training. Now, what we used to do on the career side here, and I know jumping back and forth career, you asked about the volunteers, but what we used to do, and I think this is a good idea for the volunteers to do, what we used to do on the career side, if we sent guys, and we don't do this anymore, I wish we did, if we sent guys to training, like the big conference that's coming up in April, they were required to hold a drill on a topic that they took and pass on the knowledge from the classes that they took.
I have seen that once.
When was the last time?
Once, but
yeah.
It was the specific topic, I believe it was elevator rescue, and it had to do with the controls at the top.
Now I will say, I know who did that because you're sitting across the table from them. But to go to that conference, that was part of the requirement. That was like part of the stipulation. If you're going to go to this conference, you're going to come back and teach. And we've gotten away from that. But that's something that, a way to vet on the volunteer side. You're going to set in volunteer budgets. Some of these volunteer budgets, they don't have the money. We talked about it on the training podcast we just did. If they're going to spend thousands of dollars to send somebody to a conference, they better be bringing something back. And if they're not bringing anything back, probably you're not going to get sent to a conference again. But if they're coming back and they're holding good drills and they're teaching the stuff that they learn, that holds a clout, and now we can rely on this dude as a senior man. Now, if he's only got 5 years in and there's someone that's got 15, 20 years in, and he's been running drills, and he's gone to the same conferences, and he's got all the same certificates, and he's not a boob on the fire ground, that's the senior guy you got to be looking at.
Do you think that there's the case where a senior man in the firehouse, let's say they have all the experience, they have the years, they have the experience, the certs, everything, but there's some newer kid, let's say 3 years on, 4 years on, that starts coming in and just hits it hard? Do you think that there's some sort of causation where the senior man starts to pull back, retire his position a little bit? And do you want to see that so that the new person can come up and take the role, or do you want that senior person to also step back up? Kind of starts to pull back into what I was saying earlier, is like, just because you're senior guy doesn't mean you get to, it doesn't give you the excuse to slack off, though you've earned it. You've earned a degree of leniency, but you can't slack.
Yeah, it's a succession planning that you have to have. There's going to be a point in time, and we're strictly talking about volunteer fire service now. There's going to be a point in time where a guy that has put 20, 25 years, I mean, volunteers sometimes put 40 years in. When my old man, before he finally hung up his boots, because I told him to, for him to get out of bed, just because of his age, I think he was like 62 when he finally did. He'd get out of bed, he'd go to the bathroom, he'd fumble around with his shoes, try to find his bunkers in the middle of the night, and then drive to the firehouse in the middle of the night and get on a rig. It's like, there's a point in time where you're just not going to move as fast as the younger guys. So that's where the company officer has to sit and says, hey, you've done a great job as senior man. We still love you, have around the house, give your input. But we're going to have the younger guys look up to, we're going to have them go to this other guy that's got maybe 15 years on, and we're going to let him know the stuff that you had to do as a senior man to help him transition into this position. We want to start grooming our guys to become senior man. It shouldn't just be like you turn the faucet on, turn the faucet off. One day you're the senior man, one day you're not. No, it should be a smooth transition. And the senior guy, really, if he's a good senior man, should want that to happen. He should want to give up the control because he's probably tired.
Yeah.
He probably doesn't want to listen to, if I hear a fireman in my house say skibbity toilet, that's probably the day it's time for me to retire, because that's the way my kids are. I don't even know what the hell that means. Or someone says that's Sigma, I'm probably done.
So there is one thing I was thinking of, and I kind of forgot about it just because switching into the environment of career staff. Okay, you have a crew. One person is typically the senior guy, right? So we have 4 main companies. One person on each company or crew is a senior person, or the most senior person. That doesn't necessarily mean that's your only senior person on that thing. So every time you get one new guy, you kind of tag them with the senior person, or that senior person, the senior man kind of, like you said, sort of runs the show for the day, keeps things running smooth, or you rely on him. And I completely forgot about it, is that in a volunteer operation, you might have multiple new people. So you have multiple senior guys, and like each one is tagged, hey, you go with this guy, you go with that guy, this other person, so on and so forth. So you might have multiple senior people, but across, the two, let's say you have 2 new people, 2 senior men, those senior men might be at different paces as well.
Yeah.
I
mean, they do that. A lot of volunteer fire services do that, where they have a mentoring program where you get a flood of new guys in. They assign Matt, you just got in the fire service. You are assigned to Bobby over here. Mm-hmm. He's got, introduce yourself. He's got 15 years in, a couple fire, he's got a bunch of fires under him. He's a driver of the engine. He knows his stuff. Watch what he does, mimic what he does, and and hopefully Bobby, I'm making up this name, is all about being a mentor and all about guiding you what he needs to do. A mentoring program is an excellent way to foster that senior man mentality in the volunteer fire service. It could even be done in the career side, more of an informal. Mentoring program is informal, unless you make it a formal SOG type of thing. But Yeah, mentoring programs are great if they're done properly, and you get with mentoring programs and with just senior men we're talking about. You have to give ownership to the senior. You have to give some sort of ownership to the senior guys. They have to have some responsibility. The problem is, and this is where company officers got to know what they're doing. Even though you give ownership to the senior man to do something, you know where the buck stops if something goes wrong?
Back to the officer.
Back to the company officer.
Yeah.
And on top of the ownership, you got to get buy-in from the members that this is how it's going to be. And that starts with the company officer. You know how you get buy-in with the members? The company officer goes to the senior guy for stuff, for advice. They see the company officer go to the senior man for stuff. The boss is talking. The boss is asking the senior man for advice. Well, I should ask the senior man for advice. If the boss is asking him, I should be able to ask him.
Do you ever see that accidentally go the other way? My boss inept? Does he not know?
Maybe, but I don't know. I think it's got to be.
I think you're right, because a lot of different studies and everything do show, hey, get the buy-in of your people. Let them have that ownership as well. So if you're making a big decision, you want to ask for their input. But sometimes you might just give them hey, I don't know enough about this. Why don't you do this at the same time? You're giving them the ownership of something. Ultimately, you own it, but by giving it to them.
It's like with the small engines on our rig. Mm-hmm. Now, my senior man's only got 8 years on. But you know what he's good at? He likes to tinker with stuff. And it started, the way he was brought up with his, 2-cycle snowmobiles and stuff like that. He understands how small engines work. Yeah. And if something goes wrong with a small engine, you know what? And here's where the ownership comes down on me. Boss, I can take care of it. Just a simple carb job. All right. Take care of it. You know what though? I sat there when he was doing the first carburetor job. Mm-hmm. The first time he did that carb job, I was right there watching, learning. You know what the junior guys were doing? Watching, learning, because I was watching and learning. Then you know what I did when I got home? When I had to do my chainsaw needed a carb job.
You called your senior man. Hey, get your ass over here.
Well, I did. I said, hey, I called him. I said, hey, this is what I got going on. Do you think this would? Yeah. He goes, yeah, just replace the seals, make sure you blow out the jets and clean it up and it'll run fine. And he was right. My snowblower needed a carb job. You know what I did? I loaded that back into my Jeep, brought it in here. We worked on it together. But back to the saws on the rig, the district-owned equipment on the rig. If I didn't trust him to do that job correctly and something went wrong, I'm the one that's got to explain to the chief why we're spending more money on a carburetor job than just giving it to the district mechanic. But that's where I gave a little bit of ownership, a little responsibility to the senior man on the group. And then the guys that were working that day learned a little bit. Hey, this is how the carburetor works. These are the jets that you got to keep clean. These are the gaskets that, if they need to get replaced when they get, worn out a little bit, stuff like that. That carb job turned into a 2-hour drill about the small engines on the rig.
Yeah, that's actually a really important thing. We've talked about this a million times now. That's information that's not getting passed down, whether it's at home or in school setting or pretty much anything outside the firehouse, because it's not needed anymore. Right. So that's an important piece to our profession, that you have to kind of have a basic understanding of those things. There's your senior guy passing that knowledge down that they're not otherwise getting.
Yeah, I think that's one example of how the senior man can take over. Go back to the senior man that was hired with me. His previous job was HVAC tech. If there's an HVAC call and he's working, I'm not the one that's not the one answering questions or anything. I'm looking at him. Hey, this is your expertise, man.
What are we looking at?
Yeah, what are we looking at?
What are we looking at?
Explain this to me like I'm a 3-year-old. But being on enough jobs with him and looking at stuff and him explaining stuff to me, now I have more knowledge than I did before. I'm not saying I'm at his level. I'll never be at his level with furnaces and hot water tanks and HVAC units. But now when I take it apart, I know what I'm looking at. Yeah, I know there's a filter, and I know there's a blower motor, but there's relays that go on in here. This is this is what kicks this on. This is the thermal couplers here. All that was learned from watching him on fire jobs when I was a company officer and he was still a fireman. And he's got 20 years, he's 20 years older than me, but we were hired at the same time.
Yeah. Hey, man, what a great resource to have. I think he's like one of the last ones that came in with a full-on skill set prior to.
With an industry, like a
whole career worth of an industry before he came here.
Right. I mean,
some guys have some dabbling, 5 years, 6 years at another place, and then they come in because they were hired just younger.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't have work experience. I, started working when I was 14 years old at the grocery store here.
Yeah.
Did 10 years there, and then I was a waiter and a bartender and a bouncer. Mm-hmm. But nothing like a career's worth that he did in the HVAC. Or the senior man that retired out of this house last year. He did 15 years on an assembly line at GM.
He did?
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We had to dial him up.
Yeah.
So before you got promoted to lieutenant, were you ever somebody else's senior man?
No.
No? There was always somebody just above you, and then when you got promoted, you went up?
So right before I got promoted, me and my buddy who was hired at the same time were on the same group, same rig, and a current battalion chief who had 1 year more of experience than us on the career side was on the same group.
Okay. So he never really had that. But he ended up, because the guy that just retired was essentially your senior man.
Yeah, I never had the privilege of being the senior man on the group.
Interesting.
I went from fireman, kind of like that journeyman, mid-level fireman with 7 years on, got promoted.
So if you became fire chief someday, would you make that kind of a step progression as like some sort of a base requirement, in-house requirement?
It would have to be for a senior man?
Yeah, I'm looking, and before I promote somebody to lieutenant, I would like them to at least be a senior man to somebody else. Or
I don't think that's not necessary.
No.
But I think culturally it needs to be in the fire service culturally.
Okay.
But that's a cultural change.
How do you get that going?
You got to press upon the company officers. Here's an example. We'll go back to the probie being late.
Okay.
Probie's late, doesn't go to the senior guy, or the senior guy doesn't say anything to him. The officer just gives him his verbal, documents it with a email, like I said, just for documentation that the verbal discussion happened. Probie's late again, for whatever reason. Now there's a counseling memo. I don't know how counseling memos work in other departments, but that goes in a personnel file. And if there's a counseling memo, I'm notifying at least the battalion chief, and he might have to notify the fire chief that there was a counseling memo done because it goes in the personnel file. If I was the fire chief and I see a counseling memo come across my desk that so-and-so officer gave a counseling memo to a probationary fireman for being late, my first question is does senior man talk to him already?
It's funny because similar condition did happen, and we had a new guy. I think he was right out the gate out of our station. He was late. We're kind of like cutting it real close type of thing. I remember saying something right off the bat, but he has a we'll call it a B job that he treats like an A job. And this was his first year. He's not even off probation and is taking the first 12 hours off of his shift. We run 24s. First 12 hours to constantly go to that other job.
Which you're well in the right to do.
You're well in the right to do. But culturally, guys around the firehouse, they were kind of complaining because, one, you're blocking the schedule. All right, somebody can't take off the day, and now somebody also can't take off the night because it flexes. We break up a day 10 and 14s. By taking 12 hours, you block the night shift too. Completely hose it for somebody. There was enough complaints out of the station about this person's outside life without having been off probation yet and not pulling their weight in the firehouse, I spoke up. Pulled them aside and said, hey, I just want to let you know. I understand what you got going on, but this is your A job. You need to treat this like your A job. All right? The other stuff, I'm not saying quit your B job, but it's rubbing everybody around you wrong. So you're not making any friends here. And I don't want to see you not succeed. So you got to start to switch something up a little bit. All right, adjust your schedule. Start showing up. Make sure you get through your probation, but you got to start pulling your weight. You know, it was just one of those things. The guys around the house, they didn't feel right stepping up, but I felt like it was something that should have been said because you got to step up and say it.
Okay. See, and that goes back to a cultural thing. And there's going to be people like that in the fire service, like that have the side jobs. They might make more money doing their side jobs.
And that's good. That's awesome. That's good for
right.
you.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
I'm happy for. I mean, I'm a little jealous. I shouldn't be, but I'm jealous, man. That's awesome. You figured out,
right?
Figured the game out. But also, you got to come here, and I don't know if you have my back because you're really not treating it, with the respect that it deserves.
Well, 100%. I mean, this job, if you can't train enough for a job that's going to kill you.
True.
I'm reading Jim Lechner's book right now, Gage Tally alumni. He was part of Task Force Ranger in Mogadishu. Those guys, the Ranger Regiment, trained every day. I think the only time they didn't train is when they got their 2 weeks of scheduled leave off. It was the only time they didn't train. He graduated from Gage Tally in 1984. I think he did, I could have the timeline off, but he did basic I think he did his basic training between his junior and senior year. Did his senior year at Gage Tally, went to the Citadel. During the summers, he did his officer training program through the Army. We'll go back to the Citadel. So from 1984 until 1993 when Black Hawk Down happened, he was in Ranger Regiment. He was a Ford observer, calling in artillery. He did a year or so in Korea. So for 9 years, he never fired his weapon in anger. But they trained every day. Same thing with the fire service. There's guys here that haven't flown a hose line in anger, if you want to use that same analogy, in 5, 10 years. I don't know how many years some guys catch fire. It seems like every time they wake up and come to work. But that doesn't.
Sorry, you're on the wrong group. I don't know what to tell you.
I know. Man, my group was getting it for a while. Now we're just doing nothing. Still training though.
Training. You've been training in anger, apparently.
Yeah, it's a different type of anger. But to your point about this guy, there's going to be guys like that all the time, and that's where when he's there, you have to train. And you being the senior man, that's cultural. Because if there is a problem and the company officer doesn't handle it, and the problem grows, and then the guys in the company know there's a problem, and there's grumblings at the kitchen table, and there's the talking back and forth when he's not working for those however many hours he took off. And then the senior guy's like, man, all right, I'm going to step up. I'm going to say something.
That's pretty much how it escalated.
Then you go say something, and that company officer will be like, he could be, what are you doing stepping on my toes? That's maybe in hindsight's 20/20. And I don't know if you did this. Being the senior guy, probably instead of just in that situation, just because of the brevity of that situation, I would have hoped the senior guy would have came up to the company officer and said, hey, boss, this is what's going on. I'd like to have a conversation with him just to keep you in the loop. And then you put the ownership back on the boss. Now
I didn't do that.
Right.
No.
But lesson learned.
But that boss was fully aware, and it wasn't the only, everybody else was making the complaints to the boss. I was just tired of hearing it constantly about this kid. And I'm like, all right, maybe just soft-spoken to the side. Hey, man, can you can you cut it out a little bit? And then about a year later, same conversation, no change, same conversation.
But it's like Jocko says, you got to lead up and lead down the chain of command. Yeah. The senior guy has to lead up the chain of command. He's got to, hey, boss, we have an issue. Now, something like that is a serious issue. Missing training, guys not trusting guys, that's serious. That's pretty serious. Coming late to work, that's usually that's a one-off thing. Senior guy can handle that. The boss still has to know, but I don't need to know that you had the conversation with him. I know you had the conversation with him because I could probably tell by the demeanor of the probie that walking around with his head down or in his tail between his legs all day or mopping the floors 13 times because he feels so bad about things. But in a situation like that where it's a little more serious, the senior guy, boss, can I talk to you? Yeah, no problem, man. Come in the office. And if he shuts the door, then I know we really got an issue. Hey, he's missing some stuff. I pulled his training record because a senior guy might be a fire instructor at that point, so he might have access to training records. Or even the company officer might have an issue with, hey, he might ask the senior guy to take care of it. But if the company officer asked you to have that conversation, then that's where it's done there. But if you went and had that conversation on your own purview, you should at least gave the opportunity to the company officer, say, hey, boss, I'm going to have this conversation. Guys, there's complaints at the table. I don't want to see it go any farther. I want to get this guy on the right track. Let's see if we can square him. Maybe something's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something we don't even know about. And then if he tells you, yeah, go ahead, have the conversation, you have the conversation. If he tells you don't have the conversation, then you've done your due diligence.
Yeah.
You did what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's just not. This was a few years back. Took on a whole different tasking, if you will. Just with new guys rolling in, kind of focused on that as much, or a little bit more, especially with the training aspects. Pulling records, making sure that they get all their hours. We referred back to that, I think, last podcast, 101 to 106 hours we need a year, making sure they're squared away with those mandatories. Of course, everybody ends up doing like 500, 600 hours on record. But, yeah, so anything else with the senior man people should know about?
Got to respect it. What we've talked about, we've gone back and forth on what is a senior man.
Yeah.
Is it who contributes the most or who has the most time? You hope that the years of service correlate with the contributions that person gave to the department. That person, the senior man, also has to have it in him to, like we said already, don't get out probied.
Yeah.
We can't have the company officers write off the years of experience that they have. I mean, we got company officers here that have less time on the job than some of the senior guys.
For sure.
We have a lot of company officers that have less time on the job than senior guys, and they haven't seen the career that they've had. They just know from the kitchen table, it's Tony, man. He just does whatever. It is what it is. Well, Tony's fought more fires 10 years ago than you will in a career. Just the way it happened, type of thing. So don't write off years of experience. Take in consideration what they already have contributed. But if you are the senior guy, you need to contribute.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot since you brought it up a couple weeks back. Just kind of as I'm sitting around the table watching guys filter in and filter out. The vision that you kind of have like this lens on everybody that you meet. And those, sometimes they come in focus, sometimes they're completely cracked, over time. But it's changed my perspective on a bunch of the people that we work with just because of what you said. They're probably not a slug. They've earned it type of thing. I wish there was a little bit more, like you just said. I wish some people could stand up a little bit more. Don't use it as a crutch or an excuse. I got my time, so I deserve this. It's like, yes, you do. You're absolutely right. You earned that. Now, go the distance, man. Why finish now? crush them, crush the new people, show them what a senior man really is.
Right, I agree.
You know, crush on the fire. I don't mean actually go out and bully them type of crush them. I mean crush it in the weight room, crush it on the fire ground. You know, don't just drive and call it a day. You didn't hang up your hat yet. You hang up your hat at retirement. But that's through some experiences of my own. I think that's it for Senior Man.
I think so. I think we beat it to death tonight.
Yeah, we did. All right. So working through some technical issues. We're trying a few things out here, so bear with us. Let's see. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, you can reach us at firefromtwowindows@gmail.com. That's our main email. We got our Instagram page, Fire from Two Windows. How's that going?
Yeah, man. Going good. Getting some posts up. Conversations. Just got reached out from another guy. Might be doing a podcast with their like a joint podcast. So I think they'll be kind of cool.
That'd be awesome.
If anybody wants to do one with us, more than happy. We'll talk about whatever.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about Senior Man again, we'll talk about Senior Man again.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what some of the other departments, especially like outside our area. I think we got a good finger on the pulse of around town, around our region. Be nice to see what they do 10 states over type of thing.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. But that's how you can get a hold of us. DMing is probably the fastest way to get a hold and get an answer. Other than that, hit the like, subscribe button, whatever it is on your platform. That helps keep this thing generating. New topics come out, usually through the conversations we have. Kind of ends up on the Instagram. So we like it. Anything to add?
No. Trying to track down one of our guests, but I think another one I want to talk about the fire you guys just had.
Our fire?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that'll be for another night.
Yeah.
We got some cool things in the lineup, so stay tuned with that. If nothing else, stay safe.
See ya.